Was that it was made up of lawyers who were in private practice, but also lawyers who were on the bench as judges or as magistrates or who worked with the government as what we call state counsel. So there were women in every aspect of the legal sector who belonged. So we were always there to give support, sometimes friendly criticisms, to each other, but mainly for me as a younger person, they supported me. So I learned that. That is what I took from them. So I, in turn, I have that kind of spirit in me, so to speak. And I, in turn, always reach out to younger attorneys because they did that for me, and I feel that is a legacy that I have to pass on. The
Continuity.
nurturing, the sharing, and the caring.
Anande, Mahatma
Yes.
Gandhi said, woman is the companion of man, gifted with equal mental capacity. If by strength is meant moral power, then woman is immeasurably man's superior. If nonviolence is the law of our being, the future is with women. How does this resonate with you, considering your fight to empower women?
Let me say for me it resonates well, but I will add a caveat to it. Because when my brothers, the men in our society, hear women speaking in a very strident kind of way about their empowerment, but their rights, they become very, very concerned, and I would say in some cases afraid, and in some cases aggressive and antagonistic. And I have experienced this. So for me, as I do my advocacy around women's rights and empowerment, I first want to tell women that they have to believe in themselves. But what I advocate is not superiority of women. I advocate, and this is me, the equality, the parity of women as they take their rightful place in society, especially when it comes to having equal opportunities to get jobs in professions that are traditionally seen as male professions. So, for example, my own profession as a lawyer, when I entered the profession, most of the judges were male, most of the top lawyers, the senior counsel, the Queen's counsel in our profession, they were mainly male. So I say that because sometimes I remember as a young woman, as I integrated in society, men would tell me straight up that they were intimidated by me. And I was very, very disturbed by this as a young woman because I thought that I was very nice, that I was fairly easygoing. But because of my profession, men would automatically see me as aggressive. And at that time, I used to be really upset by that perception. But now I understand it. The men are jarred by women who are confident and who demand an equal place. So to sum it up, Selwyn, I would say that in response to that quotation, I would say that women are consistent. Women are, especially once we are confident and we believe in ourselves and are supported by one another, And because we are consistent and persistent by our very natures, we will, of course,
What
inherit what we work for.
what is one important thing you believe most men do not get about the importance of empowering women?
One important saying. Well, to be honest, it might not be so much a saying that is about superiority, but one of my sayings that I do like is that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And the reason for that is because women are the mothers of all humanity, male and female. So they, as mothers, raise their sons and their daughters. So obviously, um, they will know that through all that they go through, from childbirth to child raising, child rearing, disciplining their children, managing the household budgets, and in some cases, the modern woman does all that, is wife, mother, and all that, but still goes to work and has to come home and then again be wife and mother. So women are taskers,
You
and
have
therefore that's this
sorry
perhaps
about that. You have a focus. You have a focus on women empowerment and
yes.
broadly on social rights. How? What brought you to these topics?
Well, obviously because of my involvement with these very strong women, it brought me to a place where by joining the Guyana Association of Women Lawyers and me being passionate as I am about everything that I do and I put my mind to, I eventually succeeded Justice Desiree Bernard, my mother, Pearline Roach, Josephine Whitehead, and many of these leading lady lawyers in Ghana. And I too became the president of that association. And what we did in that association had a lot to do with public legal education, going out and sharing with women about their rights and why they had a right to be equal. Also, we did a lot of legal aid and we reached out. And of course, the persons who mainly came for that legal assistance, that is free legal advice and representation in courts, were women. But there were also some very life changing experiences I had because, or opportunities I had because I became the president of this Women Lawyers Association. And one of them was to be elected to the Constitution Reform Commission of Guyana by the then president of Guyana, Janet Jagan, who herself a woman. But I was elected by the women's organizations to sit on this commission. So it wasn't being selected as a matter of right, but all of the women's organizations represented in Guyana actually elected me to sit there. And it is when I sat on that commission that I believe my life changed as I understood deeply for the first time what it meant or what was the significance of advocating for women's equality, especially at what we say at the secular level. In other words, in a country where at least 50% of the women made up the population, why is it then that women's reality said something else? Women were not, for example, equally represented in parliament, not equally represented on the private sector boards, in the banks, in the positions of management, in the trade union leadership, and in so many other aspects of our society. And it holds through not only in Guyana, but throughout the Caribbean. And as I came out to live and work in the Caribbean at a regional level with respect to women's equality and encouraging women generally to get into politics and into public life, I realized that although women were representing about half of our nation's populations, women were not being equally represented or representative in their societies.
When you became the president of the Bar Association, what was one?
Well,
Sorry,
well, let me say, I first said the Women Lawyers Association.
Women Lawyers Association. Sorry.
I subsequently became the president of the Guyana Bar Association.
Well, this is good then. This is very good. What
Yes.
is one thing you decided that you were going to change or improve when you became president of the Women Lawyers Association? And the same question applies to when you became president of the Bar Association. And were
When
you
I
able to
became,
achieve it?
yes, when I became president of the Women Lawyers Association, one, I wanted to make sure that the baton that was handed to me, that I would then run with that baton, make those women proud because their legacy would continue through my work. I also wanted to achieve being a team player because at that stage of my life, I was still in learning mode. And I wanted always, then as the president of the Women Lawyers Association, and later as the president of the Bar Association, to be someone who would lead, would be a servant leader, in fact. I wanted to lead by example. I wanted to work and set an example of hard work, of competence, of fearlessness, of speaking out, of making sure that I was knowledgeable about the topics that I spoke about, to add value to what these associations could do and did do for civil society in Guyana under my stewardship. I wanted the other members, the executive members, and the members of these associations to know that what I was doing was representative of them, for them, and for the betterment of the wider society. I think that is how I would sum up what I believed I was doing. And I did feel that to the best of my ability, I achieved those ideals when I would have completed my stewardship of those organizations.
In your experience, and I'll take a break after this question. In
Sure.
your experience, what are some transformative things that happen to a community and the nation when the women come together as a cohesive group with a positive agenda?
Well, what I think happens, and sometimes actually it appears unbalanced because women, when, as I said, when they put their shoulder to the wheel of their activities, they come with a lot of zeal and passion and they get it done. So I remember when I was then the president of the Guyana Association of Women Lawyers, for example, and because of our efforts and our advocacy, our lobbying, we were able to make sure generally that a lot of the acts that came into force, we had an input into it, that we sat with the legislators, that we went to parliament and let our presence be felt so that the parliamentarians, male and female across the divides, could know that we were behind, for example, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, so that it would be safe for women who wanted to pursue um, legal medical terminations could do that safely. Of course, it was controversial, but the association, for example, had taken decisions about that. The Domestic Violence Act, we assisted in piloting and doing the public education around it, and as well doing legally to make sure that victims were represented. Let's go now to, for example, to constitution reform. The women were very, very, very active at that time in Guyana to make sure that their equal rights were rights that they could go with to a court and say that we are being discriminated against because we are women. There were rights already in the Constitution, but they were not what the lawyers would call justiciable. They were not enforceable. So the women were very, very determined as a collective that those rights would be contained in the amendments, the post 2000 amendments of the Guyana Constitution. So what did the women do? They nominated me, so I was given the baton. And in turn, after I would have finished, I then made sure that there were women who were there to do the editing of the reports that were to go to Parliament. So, for example, a member of the Guyana Association of Lawyers, Justice, who is now Justice Roxanne George, she, for example, was there. Vanda Radzik, and some other, and Dai, Rose Benjamin. These women made sure that they were in position each part of the way. The Women's Affairs Bureau, led by Hazel Halley Burnett, she made sure that that bureau came to appear and make recommendations to the Constitution Commission. But they did not finish there. They went on to make sure that at every stage, once the recommendations were handed over to Parliament, that women were present. When the aspect of constitution reform that had to do with women's equality and its inclusion into the amendments were being debated in Parliament, women were mobilized and filled not only the corridors, but the seats in Parliament, the arena, to show that this is what women wanted, this is what they were demanded. Women again went into the political parties. The first time in my life I'd ever been into a political party headquarters. I remember at the time, the first one I went to would have been Freedom House, which was the party of the People's Progressive Party, which was the ruling party. I went to the main opposition's party headquarters, Sophia, which was the first time I'd ever entered there. I went to the United Force headquarters, which was the first time I'd ever gone there. So for me, because of the encouragement and the women willing to stand with this process, we were there together as a collective, as women's organizations, stakeholders, representatives, and individual advocates, all making sure we wanted this and we wanted it done, and we went forward to make sure that it did get done. So that is, I think, my greatest experience of a women's collective and the collective actions in pursuing what it is collectively women wanted in that country at that time.
Let's take a quick break.
Yes.
We are back with the lovely Anande Trotman-Joseph. Anande, national elections in Guyana will be held on May 11th. What does this mean to you as a Guyanese woman, and what would you say to a group of young women who are refusing to vote because they feel it wouldn't make a difference?
Well, I must say